Gear forth, snakes. I wanted to do this as a prologue to what's about to happen in the manga, but also as a way of like processing like some of this new information that we've gotten ever since this Katakuri versus Luffy fight started. Because at first we got this explanation from Rayleigh where he was saying essentially that there are some stages, some levels of Haki that you can only get to through combat, through very intense situations. And when I first read that, I was like, really? Is that how it's always worked? That's what I thought to myself, because at first it just felt like super convenient that Luffy would end up awakening future sight, observation, Haki just by fighting Katakuri. But the more I thought about it, and specifically when it comes to observation Haki, the more I noticed that, yeah, like when it comes to observation Haki, people seem to awaken it when it comes to situations that are very, very heavy on stress. To the point where it almost feels like Oda is saying that you have to experience some sort of trauma to awaken the ability. And I'll give you just two examples. Like the ones that really stick out to me are Kobe and Usopp. Like before Usopp awakened his long-range ability to see auras through walls, he had already gone through a lot of bad stuff. Like Treble had beaten him up to the point where he couldn't even move anymore. Like Tontadas had to carry him around Dressrosa. He had that whole confrontation with Sugar, but at the end he kind of like, forced himself to get up because he wanted to help Luffy. Well, that, and he also thought that he was being chased by the citizens of Dressrosa because of Doflamingo ascribing a value of 5 stars to Usopp. So that all those things kind of like came together as sources of stress for him to awaken his new observation Haki. Now for Kobe, he was literally being traumatized during the war. He saw so many people die, like he just couldn't take it. Like it was a lot of stress. Now before that, I'm pretty sure it happened before that, Luffy pretty much punched him in the face, knocked him out, just one-shotted him, and he was just pretty much left on the concrete. Furthermore, he also thought that he was about to die because he was confronting Akainu. Like, he even says it himself, like, if this is it, at least I stood up for what I believed in. And then Shanks shows up and saves him. But again, the sentiment is like, he didn't know that that was going to happen. And this whole thing is confirmed by the doctor who sees Kobe after the war, who tells him the trauma of the war must have made you awaken this new Haki ability that you have. So again, Oda has made it obvious that there's a very strong link between high levels of stress and observation Haki. If you want to connect this to what's going on with Luffy, just look at the fight. The kid's getting punched all over the place. Remember that hit that Katakuri landed with the trident? That is not a joke. Also, just a quick note, that same doctor that sees Kobe in the manga says that all Marines of Vice Admiral level and above have observation Haki. I'm pretty sure he means observation Haki. And I think this also helps support the notion that if all Vice Admirals have it, it would make sense, in my opinion, it would make perfect sense that every Admiral has the ability to see the future, at least to a certain extent, because it would help sort of set them apart in rank, at a higher level. Now, in Volume 71, a fan specifically asks Oda, so who in the Straw Hat crew can use Haki? I'm so curious. I can't even cause any love hurricanes. Kakuharu, that's the name of the fan. And Oda says, it's these 3. And this was before Usopp awakened his. So he says, inside the parentheses are the types of Haki that they specialize in. And Sanji has parentheses observation, Zoro has parentheses armament, and Luffy has parentheses King's Haki. Now this is very important because it actually gives us a lot of very good information to sort of understand where this is going to lead. Because, now that Luffy is trying to use a future sight, he's trying to awaken the ability to see the future, I guess a normal question would be, wait, if Luffy awakens that ability, if he masters that ability, what does that mean for Sanji? Does that mean that Sanji is no longer a specialist in observation Haki? The answer is no. Sanji can still be a specialist in observation Haki, and I'm going to prove it to you why that will be the case. So if you look at the designated types of Haki, the fortes of each of these characters, and you add in Kobe and Usopp, every type of Haki that the character specializes in serves a purpose for their character. Zoro is a swordsman, right? Like his goal is to become the greatest swordsman. So it would make perfect sense for him to specialize in armament Haki because out of the 3, that's the one that he needs the most. Usopp is a sniper. What do snipers need to be able to do? See long range, focus on targets that are far away. Kobe, given the fact that he was one of the first characters introduced in the entire series, and he has a link, a connection with Luffy, a relationship of respect with Luffy, I think it's been heavily foreshadowed that he will be in charge of the Marines by the end of the series, especially because he's not in 100% agreement with the way that the Marines are being handled currently. So I think by the end of the series, he'll probably have like a really, really high ranking position in the Marines. Now, what does a good leader need to be able to do? Like ideally, right? Understand the feelings and the thoughts of the people who he's leading. So the fact that he can sense people's emotions, the fact that he can like feel for them, it's just so obvious that would just benefit him later down the road when he obtains this position of leadership. Now, when it comes to the Luffy and Sanji observation thing, the question is this: if Luffy, later down the road masters future sight, which he will, because he needs it, and I'll tell you why he needs it later on. But if he manages to get a grip on seeing the future, does that make Sanji less of a specialist in observation? And the answer is no, of course not. And I'll tell you why. The designated types of Haki that these characters have is not random, all right? There is a human being making these choices in terms of who gets what type of Haki. If you notice, Oda has been very clear about showcasing different types of examples to show us that the way that Luffy uses his observation and the way that Sanji uses his observation are different. They have some similarities. Obviously, it's the same type of nature of Haki, but they have different ways of using their Haki. I'll give you one example. Sanji was able to replicate a cake by seeing it once and by smelling it. He knew exactly what type of ingredients went into the cake, how it should look, just by seeing it once, by smelling it once. In Punk Hazard, Sanji could hear the sound of a woman's tear falling, even though he was very far away. So that right there just lets you know that the way that Sanji uses his observation Haki is more like a radar that specializes in picking up little details. So it's more detail-oriented, versus Luffy's observation is more combat-oriented. By the way, in regards to how Sanji got his observation Haki, we obviously didn't get to see his training fully during the 2 years, but I'm pretty sure that the trauma that awakened it, or that served to awaken it, was being chased by these Okamas. And that brings us to Snake Man, Luffy's new Gear 4th mode. I already talked about how I'm very confident about the fact that it has to be a speed form. I think it's going to be able to be so fast to bypass Katakuri's future seeing ability to the point where he won't be able to react in time because Luffy will be so fast. Also, traditionally, and especially in Asian cultures, the snake has been associated with speed. There's even a Kung Fu style named after the snake. And this style of Kung Fu heavily relies on the user being able to land very quick jabs, very quick hits on their opponent's body, on their vital organs. So it's very swift. It's like you just get in there, get out, super, super fast. So essentially the style of Kung Fu ends up mimicking what snakes do in real life when they attack, which is this. Now, the reason for why snakes retract their head and go back into defense mode after they strike is because if they don't, that leaves them wide open to receive a counterattack. So I could definitely see Gear 4th Luffy, Snake Man, doing the exact same thing, especially because this has been an issue for Luffy in fights before. I remember during his fight against Doflamingo, he tried to hit him with a Grizzly Magnum, a Gear 3rd attack with Haki. Doflamingo dodged it, and then he went up to Luffy and said, "Now you're wide open, you moron." That being said, the form also has to be able to work in conjunction with this new type of observation Haki that Oda decided to introduce for Luffy in this fight. Here's why. After he leaves the mirror world, there's a moment where Luffy takes a break. He gets brulee and takes a break. There's a moment where he's sitting down, he's panting, he's like, and he says, if I could just work a little bit harder, maybe I could see the future too. And that made me think about this. Why didn't Luffy showcase the form before this? Have you ever thought about that? I mean, I guess you could say, well, it's because the situation didn't allow for it to be shown. He had Gear 4th ever since he returned from the time skip, but he didn't show it because he didn't need it. He had Tank Man, in reserve as well, but he didn't show it. I think the reason for Snake Man is different. What if he had the mode, but he hadn't used it because he wouldn't be able to use it properly without training his observation Haki first? Now, in order to explain this point further, I first need to start by saying that Luffy's base stats, his highest base stats, are his speed and durability. Throughout the story, we've seen that he takes very strong blows, very strong hits, and he just keeps getting back up. For examples, look no further than his fight against Sanji and also his fight against Katakuri. Now, to be fair, a lot of that durability comes from his Devil Fruit power, which is the fact that he's literally made out of rubber. And rubber is an incredibly durable material. It's why they use it to make tires. Now, when it comes to his speed, there's a moment in Punk Hazard where he's fighting Caesar where he was clearly able to get out of the range of an explosion, and neither the anime or the manga show him in gear second, so we can just kind of make the assumption that he outsped that in base. Now, he does say, whew, that was close, so he just barely was able to do it, but still, if he did that in base, that's just not an easy thing to do. Also, in Dressrosa, Doflamingo acknowledges Luffy's speed. He says, you know, kid, you're actually really fast. I'll give you that. But your punches lack power. So, and that's why he goes gear fourth. So this was all like pre-gear fourth, right? And he actually tells him, like, I'll give you that. You're fast on your feet. And then you've seen the fight in Whole Cake Island where Katakuri literally says that he's struggling to land hits on base Luffy. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that Luffy is already very fast. So if, in fact, Snake Man is a speed form, then he's going to be traveling at disgusting, ridiculous speeds, okay? And this goes back to the first point that I raised when I said maybe the reason why he never showed this form before is because he needed to up his observation Haki game first before using Snake Man. Now, I'm going to be using an example from Naruto to illustrate this point. And I know it's like, why Naruto? This is One Piece, but it's the best example that I could find. Before Kakashi got the Sharingan from Obito, and he was going out on missions with Minato and the rest, he was having problems because he was using the Chidori, but Minato told him at one point, I wouldn't use that anymore if I were you, because the problem is you're going way too fast with that lightning strike. You just dash on in there, and you're going so fast that you can't counterattack because you're going so fast you can't focus. You can't read your opponent's moves at that speed. So even though you're in offense mode, you still have a lot of blind spots. And so Minato tells him that is an incomplete jutsu. It's an imperfect jutsu as of right now. Later, Kakashi gets the Sharingan from Obito, and it is thanks to that visual prowess that he can now control the lightning strike a lot better and pinpoint different locations and counter and do all that stuff. But he needed that visual prowess first. And so I think now that I think about it, it makes perfect sense why Oda wanted to focus on Luffy developing his observation Haki further so that he could use it in combination with this new form. Now, I did the math, and the striking speed of a rattlesnake, which is the fastest striking speed for a snake, is at about 620 miles per hour. Okay, now that's not saying that that's how fast Snake Man is going to be, but I'm just using it as a springboard to say that if a human being were to go through that process of acceleration, they would black out. They would black out. Their bodies, their mind wouldn't be able to take it. Which is why I think there was a moment during the fight where Luffy thought back to Rayleigh, and Rayleigh was saying, you need to learn to sense these things unconsciously, which, if you remember, that's kind of how he dodged the needle, the dart that Flambe was shooting at him. So the whole point of obtaining Future Sight is to get Luffy to a point where he doesn't depend on normal human processing speeds to react and counter his surroundings, because that processing speed is just going to be way too slow. So if he can see the future, that's going to help him out tremendously. Assuming, of course, once again, that Snake Man is indeed a speed form. That's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you did. I really appreciate that. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already for more One Piece videos. Comment down below. Also, let me know what your thoughts are on any of the previous points that I made about observation Haki in this video. Thanks a bunch. Catch you later. Bye.